My name's Daniel. I run marketing at Screenly. We're really excited to have you all here to learn more about our new product, Edge Apps. Edge Apps, they're really it's a new concept really in the digital signage space that is allowing people to develop new apps for their businesses really more quickly than ever before. So we deal with all the complicated bits behind the app development so that businesses can really focus on the parts that matter to them and the parts that drive their business value. So we have Viktor Peterson here on the line. Viktor is the co-founder and CEO of Screenly, and really behind this Edge Apps push. So we're in for a treat today. Viktor, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Daniel. Hi, like Daniel said, I'm Victor. In this webinar today, we will be speaking about our new initiative called Edge Apps. The demo today, the setup today will be, I'll do a bit of introduction to Edge Apps, and then demo gods permitting, some live demo. So hopefully that works out well. And then we can take some questions and Daniel will be moderating questions for us. So let's kick things off. I think we have a few people in the waiting room, Daniel, so I probably want to let them in before we kick off properly. Cool. All right, let's kick things off. So Edge Apps. So let's start with screens. Screens are everywhere these days. You can see them in retail, in manufacturing, in essentially everywhere. Unfortunately, you see them to this state far too often. They've been compromised either for fun or for profit by some malicious actor. This was part of the reason why we created Edge Apps, because we wanted to make sure that the developers can focus solely on what actually matters to them, and we take care of the rest. If we take a step back and look at what these devices are, they're essentially the same. It doesn't matter if it's a vending machine, an industrial dashboard, digital signage screen, or a self-checkout counter. At the end of the day, it's some sort of PC or a single board computer with a screen and some set of accessories connected to them. That's essentially it. There might be a credit card reader, there might be a receipt printer or a touchscreen, but at the end of the day, they are largely the same. This is really what got us excited about Edge Apps, and really the reason why we wanted to create Edge Apps, because we saw these common denominator here, and nobody really tried to solve and create a uniform screen operating system for all these environments that really work in a secure fashion. And our thesis behind this is, in the future, sorry, I'm just going to invite some more people in here. I'm not sure you can not invite them or not. The reality is that our fundamental thesis is that developers will be, and already are in many industries, the most important decision makers when selecting for software solutions. So what really matters is, sorry, I'm just going to mute everybody here. Are you able to mute, Daniel?
Yeah, Viktor, if you can make me co-host again, I can take care of some of these things.
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry guys for breaking out here for a second. I'm just gonna make Daniel co-host so he can actually moderate for me. Make co-host. There you go.
Perfect, thanks.
All right. Sorry for the interruption there, guys. Let me go back to the presentation. All right. So yeah, like I said, our fundamental thesis is that developers are the most important decision makers in the coming decade. And what that means is that the developer experience is critical for adoption of new software and new technologies. When we started scoping out and building out Edge Apps, the developer experience was one of the critical things that we focused our energy on to ensure that it was a smooth journey for developers to build, develop, and deploy solutions for screens. So that has been a really guiding principle for us. Like, what is the experience for developers like? And we think we've done a good job in providing a good experience for that. So what can actually Edge Apps do? Well, here's a list of things they can do. But essentially, the idea is, like I mentioned before, to provide a unified framework that is an operating system for anything that has a screen attached to it. And that means obviously digital signage, because we've done that for a long time, but also kiosks and wayfinding machines and vending machines. And these are all examples of things that you can build with Edge apps. So let's take a step back in understanding why this is so important. Because the reality is, for a developer, what you really care about is your application. Everything else is just busy work. And if we take a step back and look at one of the first slides I showed, where you showed all these compromised screens, that's really a function of neglecting this critical busy work. Now, over the last decade, we built Screenly as a digital signage platform. And we often joke internally about that we've created what is probably the most over-engineered digital signage player out there. Now, the benefit with all this extra additional work we've done is that we actually created a fantastic framework for a runtime environment for applications. Our system already powers of thousands of screens around the world. And with this Edge app environment, we allow third-party developers to actually tap into what we built and build on top of what we've already done, so they can not worry about all this busy work that it takes to deploy screens at scale around the world. So what is Edge apps? Well, as the name implies, it's an app. App can mean a lot of things. But what it really means in our scenario is it's an application that runs locally on the device. We provide you with a JavaScript library that allows you to tap into things like metadata, and also, as we move forward, even hardware sensors. And the idea is that we can build a solution where you can tap into connect sensors, or you can tap into sorry. All right. This is a bit of a training session, Daniel, apparently. We got some learning to do here to streamline this. Right. So the idea is that we've taken care of the busy work so you can focus on the actual application. And it gets even better, because what we built with our signage platform is a framework where you can actually pre-configure hardware remotely. So we can the idea is that you can send hardware to clients and we can automatically deploy those at scale and manage those at scale. And we can dive into that a bit later, but the idea is that it's a turnkey solution that you can focus on really what matters to you, which is the actual application, and we take care of the rest. All right. One of the cornerstones in providing a good developer experience is to provide a good command line interface. We worked on in the last 6 months or so, we built out the Screenly command line interface. It's available for most platforms. For those of you who are interested in the details, it's written in Rust, it's on GitHub, people can read it, commit to it, help us with that if there are features missing. But this is a cornerstone of building Edge apps. It's how you build and test Edge apps. There are other things you can do with the Edge app, with the CLI as well. There are things like pairing a screen, upload content, and modify assets. The reason why we designed the way we've done is so that it can be used for automations, simple automations using, say, a bash script, or where you want to do some task across a large scale set of screens. So it's perfectly built for those kind of use cases. But again, the CLI is a fundamental building block in our Edge app development. Next, we have the Screenly Playground. The Screenly Playground is essentially where we provide you with ready solutions that we've already written. And the idea behind the playground is not necessarily to be a solution that you can just deploy to your customers or for repurpose for your own needs. But the idea is more to show you what you can build with Edge apps. So what we're looking to do is provide inspiration and provide you end-to-end examples that you can take, modify, and then customize to your needs. And that's really what these applications are here. And some of you might have seen our Power BI application we released this week. And it is probably the most secure way in the industry to access Power BI data, dashboards, and reports. And it leveraged the security features in Edge apps. And that's how we were able to accomplish this. And it was delivered for a Fortune 500 customers, Fortune 500 customer of ours. And so we customized it to their needs to meet their security standards. And that's using simply the security functionalities inside of Edge apps, we were able to meet this. And this is even available on our GitHub right now as an Edge app. If you want to see how we did that, it's there for you to inspect. So there are plenty of more examples so you can look. All right, let's take a step back again and look at the anatomy of an Edge app. So when you work with an Edge app, there are basically two major fields. There's the screenly YAML file, which determines the settings and the metadata for the secret for the Edge app. And I'll dive into actually a real demo in a moment here, but it's important to point out it's the screen.yaml file that is important for defining these variables. And then we have settings and secrets. Setting and secret, they work just like you expect in any kind of cloud native workload. So if you work with Docker, Kubernetes, it doesn't really matter, any serverless framework, you have a concept of secrets and settings. For most intents and purposes, settings and secrets behave the same way. There is, however, a very important difference between the two. And that has to do with the security of them. So while settings are read-write, meaning that you can both read them and write them and read them back, secrets are write-only. That means that you can never read back the content for a secret, but the device itself can do it, can read it. From a security standpoint, kind of going back to the Power BI story, is that on a Screenly Player Max, all sensitive data is encrypted on disk. And that means that even if you were to rip out the hard drive from Screenly Player Max, you would not be able to decrypt any of these secrets. So that's very important for when you're doing some serious deployments. Lastly, we have the actual content. And the content is, of course, what you display on the screen. It usually consists of an HTML file with some JavaScript to go along with it to interact with that web page. So with that kind of overview done, I want to step over and share a terminal real quick. And you guys just bear with me for a second, and I should hopefully be able to toggle over there. All right, so cool. Yeah. So like I said, this is Screenly CLI. And Salman, you had your hand up. I'm not sure there was anything.
Yeah, Salman was just looking for to see the shell, but we're all set now.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. All right, so you can now see the terminal here. Like I said, I'm already logged in, so I don't have to deal with that. I can do things like list my assets, list my playlists, and all that. But in this seminar, we got to talk about Edge apps. So let's start with a simple Hello World Edge app. So Screenly, and then we have a lot of arguments here. But if you want to create one, we start by creating an Edge app. Name. Hello. Well, oops. I guess I have. Oh, sorry. Edge app. Sorry. Name. Hello. Well. All right. So I'm now creating an Edge app. As you can see here, two files appeared in my current directory. So let's go and inspect these and look what's in there. So the Screenly YAML file, as we mentioned in the previous slide, includes a few things here. The first one is the app ID. The app ID is the unique identifier of a particular app. Next, we have the entry point. The entry point is what's going to be served when you run this Edge app. And then you can see here we have type secret. So this is actually a secret set here. And then we have a regular setting, which is type string. We can then go up to our HTML file here, and then we can see that there is just a regular HTML file that has some JavaScript built into it. Now let's dive into the emulator that we have built in here. So we have an emulator built into this, so you can easier test these, which is called screen the edge up run. And I don't have any mock data here, so I'm gonna generate some mock data. And now we have some mock data. So now I can do this, and well, you guys can't quite see that, but if I do this, you can see that. Oh, that's not very helpful, is it? Let me share a different window real quick so you guys can see how that actually shows up on the screen. So as you can see here, you have an edge app running, and this is basically for easy development, so you can actually work quicker. So if I'm gonna cancel that real quick, and then we're gonna move on to something else. Or like stop sharing, and then I can move over to our playground applications that are a bit more interesting. All right, so that's how you can use the emulator. That's how you can create a new app. You can use the emulator to actually serve that locally, so you can test your work before you even deploy it to an actual player. Now let's go to the playground where we have some applications. So you can see here, we have a few applications in the edge app, sorry, some of them being edge apps. So I've already cloned the repository here, so you have to worry about that. So if you go to edge apps, we have a few different ones here. Let's go to the clock app. It's a very simple one, so it's a good one to actually demo. And if you show here, you see you have a bunch of static files. You have an HTML file with actual clock, and then we have some settings. Now, let's try to deploy this to the actual backend, and I'll show you the end-to-end experience. So the first thing we need to do is to actually create an asset ID for this, or an app ID rather. So we need to create this. So to do that, we do screenly edge app create name. I call this our clock, and then we use the argument inline, and that's essentially just that. Use that when you already have the files on disk. Otherwise, you would create a new file. But if I use this, oh, sorry, inline, it's in place. Sorry about that. All right, and if I now do, you can see that I actually got an app ID. So that app creates that, and it now exists. Next, let's upload it. So if I go back, I can do upload. This will scan all the files in the current folder. It will try to upload everything. It will also actually check if the file already exists or not. So it already takes care of deduplication. So if you have two files with the same name, it will only upload it once. So it takes care of that. And if it hasn't changed, it will not make no difference. Right. So we now upload it. Now there's still one step missing here, which is we need to promote a version. The way it works is that you can have two tracks for a single application. You can have a candidate track and a stable track. And the way it works is that you upload, that creates a revision, and you can have how many revisions you want, really. And then you pin a channel to a given revision. So if I do, we have some shorthand code here, so you can make it a bit easier, but version promote, and I can show you how that actually works. You can actually specify the channel, and you can specify the revision. But to make our lives a bit easier, we actually have a shorthand called latest, which will basically pin the most recent version you had to the stable release, and that takes care of that workflow. Now, I'm going to stop sharing the terminal a bit, and then I'm going to start sharing how that looks in the web interface. So I need to toggle the screens here quite a lot. All right, so this is the screen I have running here. as my webinar screen. As you can see, it has 3 different images rotating through here. And I can actually show you how that actually looks on the screen, because I actually have my screen set up so I can see it. Hold on. There we go. So this is actually an HDMI capturing device. So you can see the 3 images that I had scheduled before are just circling through here. So that's the actual output, what would look like on the regular screen. So if I stop this one and I go back into my web interface, I can then go to my playlists, and I have an Edge app playlist, sorry, a webinar playlist that I created for this. So if I go down here, and then I can now search for my webinar clock. So this is the asset that I created. So it appears as just a regular asset on my screen here. So I can add that to my playlist. And as you can see, it appears there. And if I save that, and then I stop sharing, and then if the demo gods are with us, my screen here should shortly update and start showing us the clock app, if we're lucky. Give us a few more moments, and it hopefully should sync up and show us the content. In the meantime, I'm actually going to load the metadata. The local. Oh, there you go. That's the clock app right there. So that's an Edge app running on my device, the physical device running on my desk. So as you can see, it's super quick to develop these, and I can also use the local environment. If I want to work on this clock app, for instance, I can use the run metadata app, and then the run command, and I can show you how this actually looks like. So if I go back here and I pop another window open, share screen, here's the same application running as with the local runner. And that's really how it works. It's super straightforward to develop these Edge apps. We have a load of these on our GitHub repository that we are building out. We have some people on the call today that are actually working on building these out. And I guess that's really the basics of Edge apps. I don't want to go into too much details more than that, but I guess we should pause there for a moment and take some questions.
Yeah, the first one, Mike on the call with us brought this up when you were, I believe it was when you were going over the playground. I was asking about Alpine JS and I guess some of the construction there.
Yeah. So that is the JavaScript framework that's been used for developing some of these apps. They're agnostic into the frameworks. So as long as you can generate static HTML, we can use anything. So if you want to use something like Bootstrap for styling, and if you want to use jQuery for JavaScript, anything like that works. You can even use, say, a Node application. As long as you generate out to static HTML, you can use any of these libraries you want. So it's super flexible in terms of what you can do. It's more or less just a static application with some enrichment features for customizing things like metadata. So you can read back the screen name and things like that automatically.
And so Mike's asking about Vue and React. I assume those are fine also, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Vue and React, as long as you can, you can't actually run a React application on the device. It's a bit too much of a wild card in terms of performance. But what we can do is, in terms of React, I think you can do the same with Vue and most other JavaScript libraries or frameworks, is to render them to static HTML. And as long as you do that, it should work just fine. And I hope that makes sense.
I see. I think that takes care of it here. Victor, if you could talk about, so we launched Edge apps fairly recently, but of course we have more plans for them in the future, right? So this isn't it. If you could talk about some future plans for Edge apps, in particular, deeper integration with the Screenly web app and how that can be helpful to our users.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we start to get more and more requests for is interactivity. So that can mean a few different things. Generally speaking, interactivity means either touchscreens, which is something that we have on the roadmap to add support for, and that set of interactivity is when you would listen to an event from, say, a sensor. That sensor could either be something connected on the network, but it can also be something connected directly to the device over, say, GPIO or serial or USB. So that's something that we are hoping to add support for before the end of the year. And I think that's going to open up a large set of use cases. And a good example of that, what it means is, imagine you are a retail chain and you have screens in all your stores. And imagine you doing a monthly campaign for shovels. But what's good for driving? How good is that for do advertising for your shovels if your inventory of shovels is 0 in that given store? So the idea is that through the edge app frameworks and tangential technologies, that you can build in hooks to say your ERP system, where you say, well, display this ad if my inventory X above, say, 5. And that way you can make them more dynamic. So that's kind of a use case for sensors or data in a new way. So those are the use cases we're really excited about, building these more interactive, but also like pickup sensors and buttons are other use case that we're working on as well.
And also, I definitely heard some talk about, having some type of functionality within the web app where it's, deploy this to certain screens. So if you want to mention a few words on that.
Yeah. So we are focusing right now on the developer experience more so than the end user experience in the web app. But the idea, as you can probably imagine, is once we have these repository applications, is to make it easier for people to deploy these as end users and kind of create a developer environment around their developer ecosystem and kind of like an app store around this as well. So that's the long-term plan, to kind of package up edge apps as an app store so developers can build applications that other users can deploy. So we already have the backbone for that, but it's not something that we've exposed on the front end yet.
Yeah. And so, so some of the individuals on this call are more tech oriented than others. Some are developers themselves, some are not. What would you say to the folks who, listen to this and said, okay, Edge Apps, this looks really great. I definitely have some ideas for my business to build these custom applications, but hey, I'm not a developer. Maybe I don't work as closely with the dev team as much as I'd like to, and or maybe we don't have a dedicated dev team at all. What would be the best thing for them to do to get started with a web app, scope it out, even know what type of talent they need to get involved to get one off the ground? What would you say to them?
I mean, that's kind of the beauty of edge apps, because the bar to create edge apps is very low. It's just regular web technologies. If you compare that to, say, developing an Android app or an iOS app or for some tablet application, the bar is fairly high for development. Whilst there are some frameworks that makes it easier, the bar is, generally speaking, fairly high. With edge apps, you basically just need somebody who has some basic web development experience. And there are so many places to find those people. And also, like, picking up, like, if you have some technical skills, picking up basic web design is fairly straightforward. So I guess either by scoping it out, of course, and then either finding a third-party agency that can do it for you, or pick it up yourself. It really depends on the use case. Like, a lot of our customers, they have internal development teams that build these in-house, right? So it really depends. It varies from company to company, really.
Another question here from Moana. What is the difference between the Edge app and web content integrated from web interface? Is it only about encryption on the device storage? So yeah, a few things come to mind there.
Yeah, very good question, right? It's something that I kind of brushed over in the introduction to Edge app, but it's a very good question. And there are quite a few big differences. First of all, is when you're deploying, just say, a browser that points to an external web page, you are reliant on the network connectivity, first of all. And what we've learned over the last 10 some years running Screenly is that if you're deploying at scale, network connectivity will always be a problem, particularly in retail or at larger organizations. Connectivity will go down. It's just a matter of time. We've built edge apps with a lot of local caching in mind. So the applications, they run locally on the actual device rather than just rendering a web page locally, remotely. And that means that they can load a lot faster because they don't have to make round trips to download content from the web, but also much more reliably. So a good example of that is the Power BI dashboard edge app that we built. Even if, say, our backend were to go down, that app will still work by itself. So the device, of course, in the case of Power BI, is still reliant on Power BI being accessible, but that app by itself can function even when our backend is down. So I think that's a big part of it. The other part has to do with sensors. Sensors is something that you can't really leverage in a traditional web environment. In particular, if you're talking something like a GPIO temperature sensor or vibration sensor, you can't really interface with these in a traditional way on the web. There are some kind of hackish ways to do it, but there's no standardized way of doing it. And that's really where edge apps shine. As we extend these functionalities, you have a very easy way to read and potentially even write to sensors. And one of the building blocks, well, one of the bets we're making with edge app is, it's kind of, now it goes into very technical, but WebAssembly is essentially where we see this moving towards. And with WebAssembly, building complex applications that can run locally on the device that also can interface with sensors is extremely powerful. So to recap, performance and reliability, and then hardware accessibility. Those are some major things that separates edge apps from regular web environments, but also security, like you mentioned, having that run locally in a secure fashion is not a trivial feat, and that's one of the things we built with edge apps as well. So yeah, there are a lot of differences, but those kind of the big picture that sets edge apps apart from just having a regular web page. And also cost for, you don't have to host anything yourself anymore. You don't have, so you can save on hosting as well, particularly at scale.
I think also the security that's built into edge apps as well. Putting together a quick fix web page and exposing some of these data points can always be dangerous. And I think one thing we found is that the more sensitive the data, often the more useful it is, right? Yeah. So like, people want to integrate their payment terminals with a digital sign some way. You need to make sure that's very secure, handling that type of information, or business metrics that perhaps they don't want their competitors to see. It's very useful to have and show to your team, but of course it needs higher security. So
absolutely.
Victor, talk maybe for a minute here about Antheus. We have a question about edge apps and Antheus. What is Antheus to people who don't know? And how far do the edge app and Antheus worlds intertwine?
Right. So just to recap on Antheus. So Antheus is what we used to call Screenly OSE, which is essentially where we started. Going back to our origin story, it all started with Screenly OSE, which again now is what's called Antheus. And then Screenly kind of diverged away from that. Where we are right now is that Antheus and Screenly do not share any code base whatsoever. They are two completely different products. They diverged somewhere about 5 years ago, and now they share essentially no code base whatsoever. We've talked about adding support for edge apps in Antheus, but there are so many interdependencies with very deep into our player stack that would make it very difficult to untangle it, to move that piece over. Now, I'm not saying we'll never support edge apps in Antheus, but it's not something that we currently have support for, or have on the immediate roadmap to add support for in Antheus. And also the security model is very different now as it is to Screenly as well, largely thanks to Ubuntu Core. So we can far more tightly lock down the environment to make sure that it is far more secure in a way that we can't really do with Amplius.
Right. We're getting some questions generally related to the clock app, and I think it would be, what's loaded from the internet, what can be loaded on device, depending on how you set up your customizations. Maybe if you could talk about the variations people could elect to do, and then also, I think it's important to make the point on how the device metadata can be used. So whether that's like time or location, um, and just highlighting that actual data from the device itself can be very important for digital signage applications.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's start with the first part of that question, which is about what's remote and what's local. For the clock app, everything is local. Everything is served as part of the Edge app. And that's kind of the beauty of what you alluded to in the second part of the question, is that we know what the screen is. And that's because you've deployed this with Screenly, you said what the screen is. As part of the runtime environments of Edge apps, we know where the screen is. We can expose you the lat long coordinates of where your screen is so that you can use that for your exact use case. So a good example of that is, let's say you want to do a wayfinding screen and you want to visually draw on the screen the route using, say, Google Maps from where this screen is deployed to a particular destination. You can do that, and you can deploy that to 1,000 screens, and that would look different on each screen because the location is different. So the lat long is one of the things that you get for free in the Edge app environment. Another thing that we give you in the metadata is the name and the tags of the screen. And that can be super handy for things like conditional displays. So maybe depending on what tag you've assigned to screen, you may want it to behave differently, even within the realm of a single web app, Edge app. So you have the name, you have the tags, you have or labels, you have the location, you have the name of the city, so that we saw in the Hello World example, and all those things are just baked into the fabric of Edge apps. So you don't have to do anything like approximate location using GeoIP, which is at best give you a very rough approximation. It gives you a very precisely this destination instead. So those are some of the differences. I think that covered all those sub questions, Daniel, but if not, let me know.
Yeah, no, that was good. Yeah, I mean, I think this should really cover it here. Ran through all the questions actually, and added a few more here. For the people on the call who are not current Screenly users and want to be, talk to me a bit more about, okay, where can they get questions answered in the future to learn more, and how can they get started? Well, I know we have a free trial, of course. What's kind of the best first step for someone who is not fully in the Screenly universe yet?
If you're a developer, I would say poke around and stalk us on GitHub. We have quite a lot on GitHub, actually. The CLI is open source, so is the playground, and you can build Edge apps even without requiring any physical hardware. So you can actually start playing with our Edge apps already, even without having any physical hardware, and obviously without having to pay us anything. For people who want to deploy, yeah, like you said, Daniel, the regular website is the best source for that. And then you can also get a free trial there. You can also reach out to us. I think the email for support is hello@screenly.io.
That's right.
Yeah. If not, just support@screenly.io is the other one.
Right. Correct. Okay. Just scanning the questions here. Yeah, I mean, I think that covers it, Victor. Really been great to share this with you all. We've been, working on edge apps for quite a while, and even before that, just setting up the architecture and backbone for all this to happen has kind of been in the key Screenly DNA since we started over 10 years ago. So we're really happy to be bringing this to market and allowing developers to customize screens in the way they want, because digital signs are a lot more than just sharing videos and images. And once they start interacting with information in their environment and ecosystem, they're a lot stronger and more useful. So so with that, guys, we'll end the webinar. I'm sure questions will come up later. Feel free to reach out. We'll get them answered for you. And we'll also send a recording out in a day or two, so you can watch it again if you have any points you want to pick up on. So yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thanks much. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.